Everybody, Creative Katie. It is day 33 and the prompt is orange. And when I think the color orange, I automatically think of fall or autumn, monarch butterflies, and starfish come to mind. So here's just a little thing that I do. I'm not sure if you're familiar with my planner videos. I do a series of planner videos where I am repurposing and reusing mixed media, supplies, and my stash to create the planner spread. So I'm not going out and buying all that wonderful, beautiful stuff. I mean, and it is, I can't argue with that. But I'm creating my planner spreads with the stuff and the supplies that I have. And I absolutely love that because, you know, I really am using things in my stash. I'm using some products that, you know, I really haven't utilized a whole lot, so quite happy with that. And if that's something that interests you, getting into that whole planner thing, but you just don't want to buy more stuff, this may be the series for you. But anyways, one of the things that I do with my planner is plan my creative endeavors. So right down here on this bottom part, during the index card a day, that's where I write the prompts that Daisy Yellow gives us. And then I do some brainstorming around it. So if I find a quote that goes with that prompt, or it makes me think of a certain thing, I just jot those down. I may use that, I may not use that, but it just kind of helps to have it written down. You know, so in here I wrote fall, monarch, starfish. So I may do that, I may go some other way. The other thing that I do is I brainstorm other prompts and things, because there are some prompts that Daisy Yellow puts out that, you know, it's not sparking inspiration on me, and I'm not going to force my art. I'm not going to get over in my head or analytical. So I just write down those and I keep that in the middle. This middle is kind of my brainstorming. This is my mixed media technique tag videos, ideas of where I want to go with that. And then I just have some brainstorming. So this is kind of like the brain dump where all those ideas come in, and I can go back and look at some of those in the past, right? Because you can go back and forth. So just give you a little bit of idea of how I plan or organize for them. So I'm going to go with starfish. And I have a stamp that I picked up, I think Michael's, the $1.50 bin of a starfish. So you know what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp out all of these, but I pulled out my file folder of colored papers, my orange file, and I'm just going to stamp on a variety of textures on there. Now the background, I'm thinking, you know, if all this is going to be kind of orange, I think I'm going to create in the blue and the teal, blue-green, because that's right across on the color wheel, and I know that's going to really pop. So I found one of the quotes that I had in my little box, and when I print out a page of quotes, I just put them in here, and then I can flip through there. Collect moments, not things, because that takes me back to when we did collect, you know, go and look for starfish, and you know, it was such a magical moment seeing the starfish. I mean, prairie girl that I am, right? So that was one of the quotes. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to go back to, I have a quotes binder. Way back in the beginning of my mixed media journey, I, you know, got a bunch of quotes off Pinterest and I typed them up and I numbered them. And I printed them off in different fonts and the numbers. So if I like quote number 67 and I want to look for it in a different font, then I'll go. So I mean, a lot of them are cut, you know, so I just thought, okay, I'm going to flip through that, and I found again some new quotes that that I may cut out and just add to this little box because I think they might be useful with the ICAD series. These are the perfect size for the ICADs. So I came across this one, "Not all stars belong to the sky." So I think I'm going to cut that out. But I want to see if it's in any other kind of font. You know me, I love my fonts. So I'm just, you know, got some curly cues. Of course, you know, now I have a gazillion more. $168. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to take these because this is just kind of just making me, I'm getting inspiration from these quotes. So I'm just going to cut those and then they'll go in this little box and then they'll be here for me. So I'm going to put this away. So we'll deal with creating the background later, but I pulled out all of these orange tone papers. Now some are thinner and they're in tissue paper and some are on thicker paper. And you know, I'm not going to decide at this point whether I'm going to use all of them or some of them, and I'm just stamping out 2 of every one. I do go back and once I decide, I do stamp a third one of some of them, and the ones that I don't use simply go into my stash and will find their way onto very likely an ATC. So these little bits of paper, as you can see, any little bits I keep in that folder and they come in perfectly handy. So I cut these out off camera because you don't need to see that. And I really like the array of color and the textures that were created by them. I chose not to do the tissue paper ones. They were just too thin. And, you know, I'm kind of thinking about creating with my distress crayons the teal blue background. Not sure exactly how I'm going to put these stars. So while I'm thinking about that, I'm just putting on some blues and some greens of the distress crayons. You can use gelatos, you can use Neocolor 2s, you can use Dilutions paint, you can use any color medium that you wish. Now this is a gessoed surface, and that's important because I'm going to add visual texture and pattern by subtraction. Now I decided I want to try this stencil. I haven't used this stencil. It was a quarter of, I believe, a Kaisercraft stencil. And I thought maybe that would look nice like the waves of the water. So I pull out with the paint with a baby wipe. And, you know, I'm not loving it. And I guess, you know, it probably would have worked, but I guess it wasn't a match to what's going on in my head. So, you know, I simply just reapply the distress crayons again. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? Sometimes you're undecided, try. And I'm not too worried if some of that pattern shows. It's just going to add interest later on. Adding a little bit of the darker blue just for some extra interest. Thinking, do I want this stencil? No, I'm going with my Swirl Stencil. You've seen me use this stencil before. I think I've done ICADs with it. It is one of my favorites. I believe it's a folk art stencil. It was, I'm pretty sure, the very first stencil I bought when I started mixed media and art journaling. So I'm just removing the distress crayon through the stencil. So we're adding texture and pattern by subtracting paint. So this you get, it goes down to the gessoed surface, which was white. And it's really important that you use a gessoed surface if you want to use this technique. And I will put a link to my mixed media technique tag video where I use a whole assortment of mediums using that same technique. So I want to make some darker swirls, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to try the distress crayons. First I try with my finger, and that's just not going to work. Then I try with the felt applicator, and it's working, but it's just a little too tedious for me with the narrow openings. So I grab my Dilutions paint, my dark blue, and putting that through the stencil. So don't be afraid to mix your mediums. There's nothing saying you can't. That's the whole purpose of mixed media, mixing everything. So I added texture by taking away stuff, and then I've added on top of it, and that really layers it up. I think I also put the stencil going the other way. I just want to make kind of waves here. Edging it with the blue, but that's not dark enough for my liking. So now I'm just playing with these stars and trying to decide, am I going to just put them all over the whole thing? Am I going to stack them up? What am I going to do? So I play and I audition, and I try it this way and I try it that way. I stop every once in a while and I take a picture and see if I like it. I'll even crop the picture to get a look of it. Some of these jelly prints that I use to cut off have little bits of teal in them or little bits of blue in them, and that really works well together. If you don't have colored paper, you can make colored paper and you can add that into it. A little bit of the background in the focal point. So once I got the starfish where I like them, I just kind of kept them there and, reached under and put the gel medium on. I didn't want to take it up and have to reorganize it again. And I put the quote up there because especially on a smaller ICAD, but I always like to have the quote or an idea of where that's going to go when I'm developing my composition for my card or page. So I decide I want to edge this with black. Oops, I guess at first I have to cut it. Trim everything off. And I'm just using a makeup sponge for this. And now these makeup sponges, you can let it dry and you can cut off the piece or you can throw it away. What I decided to do is I have a little container on my desk and I have some of a Murphy's oil soap with dish soap in it that I use for cleanup of my stencils and stuff, and I put that in the little dish, and then I put the makeup sponge or felt applicators that have paint in them right into it. It soaks it up, and then it comes out really easy. So I edged the saying. Thought about coloring the sentiment. Opted to not do that. Now I want these starfish to pop out a little bit more. So I'm going in with my angle brush and I am using the floating technique. And I'm applying a little bit of the black to shade on the inside of the starfish. You can use this Stabilo All pencil, a watercolor pencil. You've seen me do this. I've given a lesson on this in one of my mixed media technique tag videos. I just find this very easy to do. And it just always amazes me at what a difference it makes. And you can just see how these starfish are just popping out.
Now, when you're doing this, if you have cross edges or whatever, you kind of have to skip around so that you don't wet, mess up what you've already put down. That's why I'm jumping from one place to the other, to the other, to the other. Some people prefer just outlining with a Sharpie pen, felt, or micron pen. Right? Find what works for you. I had toyed with the idea of outlining everything with bronze to play up that orange color because that was the prompt. It was orange as much as I took it into a different way. Putting the sentiment on with gel medium. And the distress crayon, it didn't reactivate at any point just putting the gel medium on. So, it isn't so quickly reactivated. Loving the color combination, using the complementary color scheme here. And I decide that I need to splatter this with gold. And of course, put out too much gold, you can kind of feed it back in. It's kind of like feeding a baby. Mixing it up, and then I'm going to grab the fan brush and splatter. Thank you for joining me. There are some close-ups of this ICAD. I hope you give this one a try. Get out painted papers or paint some papers yourself. Make some starfish. Make a background. And whatever you do, make sure you have fun. See you next time.